Dr. Symko again with another video about our brains, and this video is about neuroplasticity. It's very interesting, and enjoy.
The magnificent, and I mean magnificent, changing brain. Now, it has been called the most exciting and greatest discovery in neuroscience in the 20th century, and that's the discovery of neuroplasticity. You see, before this, neurologists thought that once the brain had formed itself, and if there's any damage done to it, that's it. You can't grow new nerve connections, you can't grow new nerves, you can't do anything. It's dead. But neuroplasticity has changed all that. See, neuroplasticity is the brain's ability to reorganize itself by forming new connections and pathways throughout life. It allows the nerve cells in the brain to rewire themselves in response to injury and disease, and also other inputs. You see, neuroplasticity helps the brain to adjust its activities in response to new situations or changes in its environment, so not just injuries. The brain reorganizes itself by having nerves grow new nerve endings, new connections to other nerves whose links were either injured or severed or just because you're learning something new, thus forming new nerve pathways to accomplish a needed function. So, example is if one hemisphere of the brain is damaged, the intact hemisphere, the right or left side of your brain, may take over some of its functions so that you can actually reestablish normalcy. The brain always wants to try and make everything work in your body as normally as possible. So when there's damage done to it, it tries to compensate. When you learn something new, it tries to compensate. When you learn something new that's harmful, it tries to compensate. So again, that brings us to what neuroplasticity can be both good and bad. Um, Chronic pain is an example of bad neuroplasticity. So for instance, fibromyalgia. Fibromyalgia is a brain problem, and your brain is sort of telling you that there's pain, that you have pain when there's not any problems with your shoulders or your elbows or your hips. But the brain thinks that there is because it has developed this pathway of pain. Learning a new language is an example of good neuroplasticity. So we never want to encourage bad neuroplasticity, obviously. So some of the things that encourage bad neuroplasticity, and one of the worst, is high stress. Now, stress in and of itself can be good. Having to accomplish a task, having to speak in front of a group of people, meeting new people, all that is stressful. But by accomplishing accomplishing a task, speaking in front of people, or actually meeting new people, actually is good for your brain. Your brain likes the stress, and then it likes the reduction of stress by accomplishing what the stress was uh, responding to in the first place. But what it doesn't like is the chronic stress. Chronic stress is not good. Bad marriage, bad work situation, constantly being in traffic, all that affects your brain negatively and actually puts it in a high state of stress so that you're always pumped up, always ready for something bad to happen. So your brain responds to changes to the environment and also to what you expose it to. The brain of your children do as well. So watching violent movies all the time can change your brain and make it always on high alert, even if you realize that that movie is not real, but your subconscious brain thinks it is so. And this is where the stress of constantly being exposed to these types of things can actually affect your brain and make it neuroplastically more heightened. And this is true of adults, but doubly true for children. because their brain is developing more, and they respond to situations, the brain responds to situations more dramatically than adults do. Now, your brain can learn bad habits as well as good habits. It's just a matter of how much of each habit you put into your brain. And your brain learns by repetition and the amount of time it is exposed to an activity. So, an example of a bad thing is sitting at a computer for 8 hours a day. It teaches your brain not to care about the muscles in your back. See, your brain runs your posture muscles. When you're sitting down, your posture muscles are not needed. So what happens is the input into your posture muscles decrease from your brain and they get weaker. And because your legs are always bent, the back of your legs are shorter, so the brain thinks they need to be shorter still, and they become more tighter. That's why your hamstrings, the back of your legs, become very tight on a lot of people because they sit all day long. So what this does is that your brain is constantly fighting against gravity, but when you sit and slouch over looking down or at a book or a computer, you're actually hindering your brain's ability to fight against gravity, and it gives up, so to speak, and your posture changes. Your posture muscles get weaker, and you slouch, you bend over, and all of a sudden you're doing it even if you're not looking at something. You walk bent over, or your head is bent over, just subconsciously. Your posture has changed. You taught it to be forward, which is actually not good for you. Your brain gives you what you give it. So, what is good for your learning, changing brain? You see, your brain learns to do things and it changes to what you give it. So, what are some of the things you could do to help it? Well, just to understand that your brain really loves a challenge. It loves to be pushed and it loves to rise to the occasion if you give it a half a chance. One activity, and it doesn't have to be hard, is exercise. And exercise actually promotes neuroplasticity. And there is not one study that states regular appropriate exercise is bad for you. Exercise of 30 to 40 minutes, moderate types of exercise, which is intermittent running or fast walking or push-ups or jumping jacks, anything like that. Your brain loves it. And not only does it help neuroplasticity, but it helps your brain to work better and faster. Learning something new, and this is very important for individuals that are stuck in a job in a rut. Try and learn something new every single day. And it can be as simple as a new word and its definition. Try and memorize it, or a new foreign word, or a recipe. Learn a recipe by heart. We need to use our brains to, to, to learn things. Learning a different way to work and not depending upon the GPS or something. Learn a telephone number. Those types of things actually promotes neuroplasticity and helps your brain become healthier. The other thing is sleep. Sleep is very important for your brain. Um, and what they've found is that the deep sleep is especially good for your brain. And deep sleep occurs in 90 minutes of falling asleep. And you need at least 8 hours of sleep a day. Some people say 7, 6, but really 8 hours is what your brain really needs if you want it to be as healthy as possible. It allows your brain to reorganize itself, to clean up, so to speak, to sort of cement those pathways you develop during that day. An interesting fact is a lack of adequate sleep actually kills nerve cells. So, in a nutshell, there are three things you can do to improve neuroplasticity. Easy stuff. Exercise at least 30 minutes a day, sleep at least 8 hours a day, and learn something new and challenging once a day. So, if you have trouble with any one of those, seek help or look here on this um, YouTube channel for ideas and tips. But just don't accept that it will always be that way. You want to improve your life and you don't want to accept the way things are.
I hope you enjoyed that, and upcoming videos will expand on a lot of these things like sleep and learning and things like that. So keep looking here for them. If you like what you see, subscribe and have a great day.